welcome everyone. Here we are, episode 36 of I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist. And today we've got a very special guest. We've got a special guest who's going to talk about, I guess the larger theme is the things we can't leave behind. But we are excited to chat about and just go through some of those things that we can't leave behind, because that is something that we have spoken about lots. We've spoken about on the Facebook group, but also in past episodes. It's those things that we cling on to. T, I know you're excited too.
I am, because C grew up in church. Unlike us, we sort of came in a little bit later, still quite young, but we certainly weren't brought up in it. And she was also on staff at Christian City Church, which later got rebranded as C3. And I want to say PO. It's really cool to have her here, because she's another person that, whilst she was a teenage fundie, she was also one of these middle leaders in the church who got to see the inner workings of a different denomination this time. Although she was involved, from what I understand, she was also involved in Hills Christian Life Centre, which later became Hillsong, but it's specifically around C3. So I think that's going to be quite cool. So why don't we throw straight over to you, C, and say, g'day.
Thanks, Dee. Hi. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I really hope that a bit of my story is helpful to other people and maybe gives people some things to think about for what the future holds for them in terms of their life and faith journey.
Yeah, I think it was interesting when we were getting ready to hit record that we started talking, and already the conversation started to flow because we had so much in common and we wanted to know so much about your story. So I'm sure this is actually going to be a really, really good episode. But starting off, why don't we ask you who you are now? And then from there, if you could tell us your journey and how you ended up as a Pentecostal.
I guess, like a lot of people who listen to the potty here, that still developing how I identify myself in terms of faith. I know some people say, oh, I can't call myself Christian, I cringe at that these days. So I'm still in that journey. And I think that's part of it, is it's still working through and processing bits of the deconstruction to look towards what that reconstruction is going to be. And that's a constant process, I guess. So for me now, I certainly don't attend or haven't attended a church for a very long time. So probably somewhere between maybe 18 years. But the interesting thing, and why the concept of this, all that stuff we can't leave behind, I think is fascinating, because it still feels like it was yesterday. The personalities, the people, the sense of being part of something bigger than yourself, the sense of feeling you're connected with lots of people, that sense of safety that you get from that, like all of those kind of things that I think back to my time within the Great Big CCC is those are some of the good things I want to hold on to, or see how can I reproduce those things in life now. So yeah, definitely still processing, definitely still learning, and really feeling like the rose-colored glasses have come off a while ago, and I'm starting to see things a whole lot clearer outside of, so we used to call it sometimes the biosphere. You think of the biosphere in the desert was this thing where the climate, it was climate controlled. And when you step outside of the climate controlled environment, how much brighter and unique and fresh air and other kind of experiences you can have when you meet and interact with other people on different journeys. That's a really long answer, guys.
No, I don't think it is. And, certainly we'll unpack that more as we talk more through the episode. But it is those things. And, some people would sit by, particularly some people are still in the fold, and go, see, they can't let go of it because it's real. But no, for us, I think it's about the elements of it, that seeking of community. I mean, that's natural. That's natural stuff. And for us to be part of something, it doesn't have to be a belief system as such, I think, but it's just that community, that connectedness with people is so incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty tribal, like when you think about it. And I've been doing, a lot. I am a bit of an overthinker at times, but you go back to very fundamentally in terms of who we are as beings, as humans, as people, as coming out of caveman. And gee, that's controversial. Oh my God, evolution. But what was it in the caveman time where you needed to be part of a tribe. You needed to have that connection to people. It was for safety. You had to protect yourselves from the woolly mammoth. You had to work together to find food and to forage and to, be able to fight the other tribe from the other side of the valley, and that sense of strength in numbers and that strength in having each other there was vital to your very survival. I think that is a huge sense, and that safety you got from being part of the tribe is what so many of us got or get, within that sense of a church environment.
So you had this at the very beginning, right? In church, you were actually raised in a church community. Can you tell me about that?
I kind of think of it sometimes like the slippery slope to Pentecostalism. So my parents were Anglicans, we were traditional Anglicans. We grew up going to the local Anglican church. My parents were always involved in, the parish council, or mum was playing the organ. And so it was always a part of my life, in Sunday school. So from a very young age, like I've actually never known anything different. Every Sunday was at church, and dad's running the men's breakfasts, and mum's on the ladies, whatever. And I think that's for leaving actually was that if you have come out of that kind of experience where you've actually known nothing else in your life, to actually step away from the tribe and to move away from that is incredibly difficult, because it's not just your existential stuff about faith that you're questioning, but it's also the stuff about who you are as a person, because your whole personality and your whole being has grown up within that framework. From the Anglican end of the spectrum, my parents then somehow, I don't know what happened in their lives, but they moved away from there, and we ended up at the Baptist church, at quite a large Baptist church. And from the Baptist church, and then it was the Christian and Missionary Alliance, which was a small church that was very overseas missions focused. And then, there was maybe drums in the service. And then I don't know how, but they ended up, and obviously I was a kid at the time, so I just, where they went, I followed. It was actually Christian Life Centre. It wasn't Hills. It was a smaller one, not as big as the Hills Christian Life Centre, but within the AOG. So the not so big AOG, I think there was sort of a congregation of around maybe 350, 400-ish kind of thing at the time.
So let's call that medium-sized AOG.
Medium-sized AOG. And yeah, in that place, my parents became very, very involved from a lay pastoral point of view. And I kept trying to connect into the youth group, and I loved your episode about, speaking in tongues. It's just like, just let it flow now, just saying blah, 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 blah. It's like, hang on, that exact same experience happened to me.
See, could you speculate on why you think your parents were ultimately attracted to moderate-sized AOG, or whatever we chose to call it? What was it, do you think, that took them, because they were obviously church hopping a little bit, and I don't say that to disparage them, right? I would have once upon a time, but they're obviously looking for something. What do you think made them settle there?
One of the triggers I think that they had was, and this is back at Baptist Land, was doing a thing called BSF, Bible Study Fellowship. And it's a pretty intense, from my memory, pretty intense getting into the Bible. And there was homework and there was reading each week. And you'd go like going to school, like doing a sort of a night class thing. And I think that when they started reading and really getting into discovering the Bible for themselves, they were hungering for more, and they felt, and I guess it was maybe a teaching thing, but also a relevance. So they originally got saved at Billy Graham back in, the 50s, Billy Graham crusades. Don't you hate that word crusades? Like the crusade was attached to.
Yeah, crusade has a lot of baggage.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Anyway, so what attracted my parents? I think I don't know. Was it that they felt there was that vibrancy, an active, a social part to it as well. I think in terms of them wanting to connect more into a community rather than just coming in to plug in, play the piano or the organ and plug out again. I think they were looking for more of that connection themselves. That's all I can think of. And they both have been all their lives a very caring, pastoral type people, wanting to get into Christian counselling and help people in that way.
Which is a very Anglican thing to do, isn't it? That whole Christian counselling thing, that's very strong in the Anglican tradition as much as it is in Baptist. I don't know, in Pentecostalism, at least my experience, there wasn't a whole lot of counselling. There was a lot of advice, but I don't know that there was a whole lot of counselling. So let's jump back into you. You're now in moderate sized AOG. You're being coached to speak in tongues. You're now a part of this. What happened from there?
The moderate-sized AOG didn't have a big, great youth group.
More moderate sized youth group.
Moderate-sized youth group. And, I'm just one of those people. I've always felt a little bit different to everyone. I never really felt like I fitted in. For one way or another, one reason or another, I found myself at Great Big CCC in the big warehouse they used to have, which was, it's quite close to and connected at that time, quite a surfy, very super casual, laid back kind of a culture. And I'm fascinated by different cultures within churches in terms of the types of people they attract and how they present themselves and the people they want to attract. And at that time, it was really laid back. You turn up at church with your bare feet straight off the beach, and you got kicking off the sand as you come in, kind of thing. And it was a bit nasty. The carpet was a bit stained and grotty, and it was in an industrial area, part of town, and it kind of felt like you could be whoever you wanted to be there, and so whoever you were was accepted, and there was no pretense about it. There was no trying to be nice or nice as in look nice, trying to present an acceptable face. You could just turn up as you were, and that I found attractive. And again, I was a teenager, so the music, the band was certainly something I was attracted to. I was a musician myself. At the time I was working, I'd left school at year 10, so I was already working when I was 16, in sort of entertainment sphere kind of thing, always drawn to the creative side of things. So I kind of felt, oh, wow, here is my tribe, or is this my tribe? Here's this bunch of creative, slightly grubby, come as you are kind of people. So I started going to Great Big CCC, and I was there by myself, like without my parents. So I'd actually sort of stepped away from there, under the covering, and yeah, sort of really found my feet there. And down the track, my parents did end up actually joining me. They sort of saw how great it was for me and how I'd found my faith tribe. I'd found my belonging with this group of people, and found an expression. And so I listened to all the, hey, change your life and come to Bible college for next year kind of thing. And by going and doing creative arts college, I absolutely was 100% or 110% found my people. It was like it had taken me however many years of wafting along, and finally I fit. I was the square peg in the square hole, and that everything that gives you was in that place. And over a series of time, and I remember myself saying this to myself, and this is long down the track when I was on staff and working really long hours and giving it absolutely everything. I remember saying, you know what? My whole life is in this place. I've got my friends here. I didn't have any non-church friends, My family is here. My work is here. Like every part of my life was within the four walls of the building and within that community of people. And that, in terms of what you can't leave behind, that sense of belonging and the sense of contributing to something, the sense of which now I see as and can be interpreted as arrogance of that real sense that you're right. You've got the answer. It was massive, and I didn't know and had not really known anything outside of that sort of a faith community, whether I felt I really belonged or not. So I'd finally found it.
So you'd gone from your medium size and you'd upsized to a whole meal deal.
I'd upsized. I had the supersize. I had the supersized drink. I had the fries on the side. I might have even had some cookies and
You had a sundae. I'm certain you had a sundae.
And as we know from our miracles and healing episode, McDonald's is in fact a gift of God, and there's a bit of product placement. So can we get some context? What year did you join Triple C or C3 PO, as they're now called, and what year did you step into full-time staff?
I joined the church in 91. And oh God, that just, you actually do the maths on that to today and you go, well, actually, that's part of what pandemic and COVID brain and calendars are sort of all over the place anyway. But that's a long time ago, right? Which is, again, why is this stuff so fresh?
Interestingly, that's around the time that B and I joined Great Big AOG in our state and city, isn't it, B?
Well, but also I started my Christian journey in a Triple C in 1989 and was going to
Get
one
out.
until 1991.
Well, there we go. Look at that. It all comes together.
Might we ever have met, B?
No, no, I think they were different cities. So mine was a very surfy one as well. And I remember actually because had, of course, had to go up the front when there was an altar call saying, hey, who wants a part of this? And I went up. I remember the pastor praying for me and me going through that old sinner's prayer. And at the end, he goes, it's better than getting stoned, isn't it? I went, look, it's up there. And and
It's up
then
there.
I was 17. I went outside and had a cigarette. Like I was just shaking. I was like, what the fuck have I just done? And I was having a cigarette and I had about 2 or 3 people come up to me and go, do you want to be healed from that? I thought you'd be healed from that when you said the sinner's prayer. I was just like, no, I just want to finish this cigarette. But yes, so anyway, we digress. But yes, I was a triple CI. That's how I started out.
Yeah, well, I always found Triple C when we were in Great Big AOG, Triple C was where the music was coming from. This is
Yeah.
before Hillsong. Hillsong
Mm,
was just this music conference that came out of this
absolutely.
Sydney AOG church, right?
Yeah.
And so Triple C was Phil Pringle and the music and the lights, and it seemed really flashy, which is kind of different from what you're talking about. So maybe the way it was sort of projected onto other Pentecostal churches as opposed to what was really going on is somewhat different.
Look, it certainly got a whole lot slicker and a whole lot more produced as the years went by. But back in those days, yeah, there was a full band up on stage, and yeah, they sounded great, and yeah, they did all these album recordings, and I'm sure there was. I saw that great post in the Facebook group about what are the songs that get stuck in your head. Oh gosh, there was a few of those. Yeah, it still had that sense of. I mean, there was certainly no production lighting and we still had the overhead projector slides. There was someone up on stage with the overhead projector. God, those were the days. Because the senior pastors were creatives themselves and had sort of grown up within a little bit of that hippie, laid-back, creative scene, they were really into the whole, developing great music. And something I remember is that they would only sing their own songs, so they'd only do their own in-house Hottest 100. And even when Hillsong did start emerging and coming out with some, great music at the time, they'd never sort of cross-pollinate. They'd sort of wanted to keep strongly within their own family and within their own brand. So, but no, it was I think of wild days in terms of producing these albums and the amount of work and the hours from volunteers doing everything over and above just to put out this, what we saw as being great music at the time. Was it? Yeah, some of it was okay.
That's all right.
That's all right. Bible college, in which was creative arts, because I got drawn into that. I'd left a job working within casting, like production, like film and TV casting, actually casting for well-known TV and films, and because I wanted to go back and study music full time. This was my great opportunity. Take a year off for the Lord, do that, and I was already with my tribe. I'd found it's like, well, I just want to throw even more at it. Let's throw my Monday to Friday 9 to 5 at this. So Bible college creative arts was 93, and then I started working full time in 94. So 94, 95 and 96, I was on staff full time. And that during that period, there was the shift which was a big geographical shift. It was a physical shift, but it was always also a shift in terms of culture and the way the church presented itself in terms of the building. And, obviously they went through, like so many churches do, the building program, let's all raise funds to build a building. So that got us out of the slightly skanky warehouse into a very, very nice, lots of comfy chairs and carpet because, the Lord deserves the best. And the stage with the lighting and the, more professional everything, much more slick produced.
So do you think that's when it became much more on the road to what it is now?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot of people, I know a lot of friends sort of felt that as well. At the time, we actually thought it was a good thing. We were upping the ante. We were becoming more professional. We were becoming more attractive, but to a different type of people. So maybe you felt less like you wanted to turn up and more like you actually had to dress up. And I remember being told that, hey, we've got this nice building. Let's all now present ourselves. Let's all dress up and bring our best selves. Let's live our best lives and bring that to church. Yeah. So how much is intentional and done out of purely wanting an outcome that you think through strategically like any business plan, or how much is actually, just totally doing everything with the best intentions, just honestly wanting to see, drinking the Kool-Aid and believing, look, this is for, we want people to live their best lives. We want people to be a part of this because we are totally sold out and believe it's the only and the right way.
I feel that way about even the Revival Centre, which I will say, is unashamedly a cult. I do believe that the leaders genuinely believed what they were doing. They became as much victims or as much cogs in the wheel of the system, or however you want to look at it. I don't think that there's very many people, at least in my experience, that were faking it.
Mm.
Maybe some of these visiting preachers, I'm not sure, but definitely the people that were running the churches that I was involved in, it seemed like they really believed it. So I have no doubt that people like, Phil Pringle and Brian Houston and, you know, whoever else
Yeah.
believe what they're doing.
Yeah. It's that whole the heart's in the right place. They're trying, coming from a good center.
I think so. I think most people are genuine about it, and I think we've said this before that there's very few people that are in there maliciously
Yeah.
or there for. There's a lot of people there for self promotion. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I think most people, it's good intent, and they go in there to help people. And I think there is a genuineness. They want people to find what they've found, what they've got, and want to be part of that. There's
Yeah.
there's no doubt of that about that in my mind anyway.
I think a lot of even those narcissists, we could list off the names of the people that get the Facebook group going. You know who you are, but I think even they oftentimes genuinely believe it. It's coming through a complete warped worldview and a complete warped psyche, but
Yeah.
they genuinely believe what they're on about.
What's interesting though, I think if you think about those who are on the inside, really in that inner sanctum, in our chat with Bart Campolo, he talked about he knows some very high profile ministers who are there and they're faking it. They're there because they actually don't believe it anymore, but it's not safe for them to come out because it's not a safe environment for them to go, you know what? I actually don't believe this anymore because they risk everything. Their worlds will fall apart because they've invested everything in it. So, how do people do that? How do people deconstruct and deconvert when you've got your world invested in it and
Mm.
you risk losing absolutely everything?
It's something that I find quite interesting is when and it's only recently, in fact, one of my also former church friends who I'm still in touch with, I made a comment or I posted something, which is a share from something that was in the Facebook group. And they said, wow, you've really come out now, because I still have Facebook friends from the church days. I've kept my journey to myself for a whole lot of reasons. And when I shared it was that video, it was the YouTube video, it was on the other day. It was very, very funny about Pentecostal churches. And it was interesting seeing who commented and who liked from my old life. And all those people who commented and liked, who I might not have spoken to or chatted to for years, I actually just dropped them a line and said, hey, so how do you feel about what happened 20 years ago? What's happening? You want to chat? Do you want to have some drunken Zoom drinks? So yeah, but I find interesting is the people who have not come from a church background or have not come out of a fundamental church, but see everything only from the outside, all they see is they're just after your money. Whereas actually, if you've been inside, you see what I feel is, like you say, genuine heart. Actually, this is not just about the money, at least not in the beginning. That's just a blessing for the pastors. Let's just do that. We see so much more, because I think we do actually have seen the hearts of the people who are behind these organisations.
What are some of those things for you? What are some of those things that are there that you see in people's hearts? The good stuff, the stuff you miss.
Well, it's a lot of what we've talked about. It's that being with your tribe, finding your people. And what is it that you look for? How do you know when you're in the tribe? You find people with similar goals, similar drive and a passion. You find people
Similar values.
similar values. I actually, oh my God, I've just had this flashback to a song. And this is actually a Hillsong song, which was all over the world, people just like us. That was one of the lines from this song. And that's the thing, you look around you and you see people just like you. They might not look like you physically, they might not be raising your hands or clapping like you do, because I was a little bit different when it came to all that within the church anyway. But you found people who's like, oh my God, I'm safe. So you find safety of people who get you. You find a sense of contributing to something that's bigger than you, that's you're helping. So all that stuff tied up with, long volunteer hours. Some of the things I think back to, I did, like when you did the Bible college and the volunteering thing. One of my jobs at Bible college was doing the ironing of the senior pastors of their family, while trying to also hold down a part-time job and that kind of thing. So
See, that freaks me out. Can I
Oh,
interject? Sorry,
same.
but that just
yeah,
freaks me out, because it's
freaks
like,
me out now.
what has that got to do
Yeah.
with building the kingdom? Doing the ironing, watching. I mean, all the, and it's funny because it's so gender based as
Oh,
well, or gender
totally.
biased. But I was watching the younger girls, and they were girls sometimes, the younger women babysitting, and the boys and the men would mow the grass and all this, but they would do it at the pastor's house on the weekend. It wasn't necessarily even just at the church. They were going off and doing these things, and these guys are on salaries, right? And they had money and they had stuff, and meanwhile we were trying to keep these part-time jobs, exactly what you're saying, and yet here we are doing more for them.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But that actually brings me to think of, remind me of another thing I used to say to myself, apart from, my whole life is in this place. And this was when I was doing really long hours. It might have been when a new album was being recorded or there was some big event or something happening. It actually didn't bother me. I don't care if I'm being taken advantage of and if I'm being used for my free labor, because that's not on me, that's on them. I'm doing this from the right heart for me. I'm doing it because I'm totally serving Jesus. That's that's why I was doing it. And if someone else was seeing it another way, just as free labor, well, that's their shit. That wasn't me. And that was, yeah, that was my center of working. That was where I worked. That was my center I worked out of for 3 years.
So no one could say you didn't really believe this. No one could say you weren't really committed. You were enmeshed. This was coming from the heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no doubt. And when you come to all the good stuff, if we're building more on that, I think a really big part was feeling like you are giving, feeling like you are, and it's not giving of necessarily money, because hey, I was on a full-time church wage, but it was about giving of yourself in your time, because I really wanted to help this vision. I wanted to see this, and when the senior ministers would come up with a new vision or a new thing for the future, I'm like, yeah, I am so there. I was signed, sealed, delivered, absolutely sold out and passionate. And there's no question. I think back to some of those words that people have over you. And I remember this visiting prophet, calling me out once and saying, the only line I remember actually is, you don't know how to lose your faith, do you? You've had this for a long time. You'll never lose your faith because you don't know how to. looking back now, it's so interesting seeing things from a completely different perspective, and the journey of from then to now, which I said is still evolving and I'm still working stuff out as I go, just seeing things from a completely different lens.
So how did that all start? Because you were, for most of us anyway, looking at here you are at CCC, right? You've got a full-time creative ministries paid role at CCC and you're in there for years. Exactly. You had arrived, sister. You were there. How did it start to turn? How did you begin to leave? Not necessarily the faith, but even just the church or even just the role. How did you step out of that? What prompted that?
I think it's really connected, on reflection, I think it's really connected to my past of having been through many different flavors of the Christian ice cream. It's all ice cream. There's just different flavors. Like, I don't like mint choc chip, and some people do. I was about to make a comment about Pentecostals being the hokey pokey, but anyway, I'd always had a deep respect, to use theological terminology, ecumenical approach to the ways that we perceive God and the ways that we see the big God. And I respected that it was actually cultural, and some people, and personality too. Like, some people just don't dig the big band; it's not their jam. Whereas some people are like, you know what, I just want to light a candle and burn some incense, and just ring a bell and just sit by myself. You know, other people want to do the whole let's get into scripture and let's be the Baptists with our biblical preaching and teaching. And I'd always seen that there was not one was better than another. It's just you got to find your jam, find where your slot is. And because of that, it I think informed my exit interview and my departure, or stepping into the departure lounge, as I like to call it. I had this absolutely, those one of those spiritual, supernatural moments which you talk about in terms of if we're looking for my authentic story. It was an afternoon in the office. I'd walked into the auditorium, and this was a big auditorium, and all the lights were out, and there was nobody else there. It was absolutely quiet, and I went down the front onto the carpet just to have a bit of a D&M with the Lord. And I just, this absolute wave of, I can only describe it as a sense of feeling at that one point in time when I was connecting what I thought was supernaturally with God, that there were people all over the world in whatever culture, community, gender, socioeconomic difference, politically, there were people all over the world doing exactly what I was doing at that point in time, from their own heart and their own voice in whatever way they expressed it. And it wasn't Pentecostal. It was everything. It was all the flavors of the ice cream. And I walked out of that having, look, what we used to call a revy. Oh, I've just had a revy. I've had a revelation. And it's not a revelation that was readily accepted, I think, within Pentecostal circles, because, there's this sense that they've got the best music, the best production, the best lighting, the best everything. Why would you want to go somewhere where you just light a candle? I thought, how can I tell this story of this thing? And that over several months developed into the desire to want to write a book, and to go and not so much write a book. I wanted to go and meet these people that I'd had this sense of them at that point in time. I wanted to pick up a camera. I was a pretty keen photographer at the time. Pick up a camera, pick up a recording device, like an audio recording device, and go and hear their stories and ask these people that I'd sensed in my mind, why do you do this thing called worship? Why do you want to connect to the divine? What is that? How does it make you feel? What language can you put around that that's not church language? Like, if you had to explain that connection, that experience with people who have no understanding of religion or God, how would you describe that?
So this was outside of Christianity. You were thinking you want to just connect with as many people who are having an encounter with the divine, or was it within the Christian framework, albeit a broader one?
This was within the Christian framework. So this was just the Christian ice cream. Hadn't gone to gelato or anything slightly edgy like that yet. That might have come later. But because, again, I was so convinced that, Jesus was the only way. He was the way, the truth, the life. So if you tried to come at the Father any other way, that wasn't quite, legit. I then set about doing a bunch of research for a year to try and find people and connect with people all around the world. And then I broke it to, I'd actually walked this journey with my pastor. So not the senior pastor, but just the person who was my pastor at the time. And he was very creative and he was into it and passionate and said, yeah, this is amazing. Yeah, this is great. I love these stories. Yeah, if you're feeling you're called to go and do this, you need to go do this. Cut to, a year later, I'm hopping on a plane with not a whole lot of money in my back pocket. I'd got a little bit of sponsorship from, film companies. So this is actually so long ago, I was shooting on slide film.
So what year would this be?
This was 97. So 1997. And I'd had amazing doors open to me. So I was, it was one point in time where I was flying out to a US aircraft carrier in the middle of NATO war games in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, with an arrested landing and a catapult takeoff. It's like the kind of stuff, this doesn't happen to 23-year-olds. Like how did this kid from the suburbs end up landing on an aircraft carrier, living there, and then flying between them for a few days in a helicopter to go and interview service people about this kind of really deep, important stuff? Or how did I end up in tiny villages in South America and all this sort of stuff, having these conversations, which, the thing that haunted me all the way through was all over the world. Not only was there that line from that Hillsong song, but they were singing Shout to the Lord in all different languages all around the world. Or there was also another, was it all honor, all power, all glory, something like that, would just turn up in countries all around the world. But I was also trying to stay away from Pentecostals and charismatics. I was seeking out the Orthodox, the Coptic, whether it be the Southern Baptist or all sorts of things, to try and get this different perspective on trying to touch, trying to communicate, trying to engage and connect with the divine, with God.
And the broader tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you do this for? See, this sounds amazing, by the way. That's just an incredible experience. But how long did you do that for?
This was a year. So I had to take a couple of months off. I was away the whole time, and I had to stop in some places to actually just earn some money. So I'd stop and get a job, in a few different places. And, it's a year of experiences that I went through. I had some pretty shitty experiences during the year. I had some things go quite wrong. Well, at the time I was so full of faith. It's like, God, I know you've brought me out here, and I know that if really bad stuff happens, like let's say I get, for instance, kidnapped in LA, or let's just say I have a really bad psychotic reaction to an anti-malarial drug in South America, in the middle of Brazil, that's okay, because, hey, God, I know you're in control. So I still had this absolute, utter faith, and that I was doing the right thing. And I'd been given this gift of this project to do. And it actually kind of didn't matter, what happened to me, as long as I just kept doing this thing. And I remember thinking at the time, and now on reflection, because there's a story to what happened at the end of the project, was I felt like God was saying to me, it doesn't actually matter if this book gets published. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you've said yes, you've picked up your camera, you've picked up your tape recorder, and you've done this thing. So it might not have been to actually tell the stories publicly. Maybe it was just something that needed to happen in me. Like, that sounds really selfish, but that's kind of, and maybe that was just me telling the story I was telling myself of, if it all goes to pot and, it ends up to being really shitty at the end, then that's actually okay. That was my out. But it turned out to not be shitty at the end, which was good. But one of the things that did deeply change me and it was a disappointment, and there was certainly a sorrow, was that I had left the church and my family within the church to go and do this project out on my own. And I never heard once from the church during the time I was away.
Interesting.
So I had friends who were in the church who would, this was actually right on the cusp technology wise. 97, email was just starting to become a thing. I went and got my first Hotmail account, but I was still faxing. So I would write these long, long, long emails. Sorry, not emails, faxes at the time, and fax them through. And I'd never really hear back. I never heard from my pastor. I never heard from the senior ministers. And even though, in their minds, they said they sent me out. We prayed for you, we sent you out, and, we said, good on you, and off you go. And it's a similar thing when a lot of people, I think, leave a fundamental church, is as soon as you've stepped away and you're not visible and you're not there, it's not a specific, like a shunning. It's not like that kind of thing, but you're not on the, what I like to call the roundabout. Like, those children's playground equipment that they don't make anymore because kids kept breaking legs, but big round turntable type thing. You jump on board, you'd start running around the outside, holding onto this thing, building up speed, then you jump on and it keeps spinning around. And the only thing you can see when you're on the roundabout is your other friends on the roundabout with you. And you're having a great time, and you're going round and round, and it's great. And you've got the wind in your hair, and everyone's laughing and smiling, and this is great. It's so fantastic, isn't this great? But the world outside is a blur. And then as soon as you step off the roundabout, it's like suddenly the world comes into focus, and you can see everything outside. You go, oh my God, look at this. Look what's out here.
And you also realised that you weren't actually going anywhere. You were just going around and around, but there was a lot of movement and a lot of momentum.
And you're having a lot of fun. And my experience when I came back from this trip away and this project was I tried to get back on the roundabout, but it was going so fast and it had been spinning while I'd been away that I just kept getting bounced off. And I couldn't find my step to get back on. And I tried and I tried and I tried. And I didn't fit anymore because I'd seen something else. I'd seen the other. I'd seen answers to questions that I'd had. And I'd also seen that it's okay to have questions and never have answers. But back on the roundabout, it's all about having a nice, clean answer to everything, as long as the answer comes from within the roundabout.
That was my experience when I went to Countrytown AOG. When I came back to Great Big AOG, I could not reconnect. And I was looking at them going, what the fuck are you people doing? This is just ridiculous, And I actually started to challenge a few people, and it wasn't received well at all. So I can totally understand that what happens is you step outside of what you're calling the roundabout, and not only did you see the broader tribe, but the broader tribe broadened you. And you just don't fit back into that small little picture anymore. One thing I want to throw your way is you didn't leave in a bad way. You didn't leave feeling burnt, feeling used, feeling, abused. None of that. You actually left in a good way. Yes? No?
Yeah, yes, and. So the yes and is that, I tried to come back in having had this experience. And when I came back, I was hyper aware that the places, the people, the experiences I'd had, and the change that had happened in me, what I'd learnt wouldn't necessarily be well received as, a topic over coffee at the church's cafe after a service. So I made a really concerted effort to not talk about my experience, even though friends had said, oh, how was it? It's like, how do you sum up 12 months of mind-blowing experiences? I just say, oh, that's great, but how are you? And I was kept trying because I didn't want to raise conversations that would be not welcomed in the church.
And did that come, because you had tried and you'd already seen, or you knew in advance this just wasn't going to be received?
I knew in advance it wasn't going to be well received. So I purposely tried to keep my mouth shut. And this is like you said, I wasn't burnt, I wasn't angry, I wasn't bitter. It's just makes me sad. And I was very sad at the time. I was trying to get back on the roundabout, trying to plug myself back in, be connected. And I was at work, and I had a phone call from the senior pastors or someone in the senior leadership team who wanted me to come in for a meeting. And I remember, that was really weird for this person to call me because I didn't really have much to do with this person. I was like, okay, can you tell me what it's about? No, no, well, look, just come in and we'll have a chat.
Well, that's never good. That's never good.
It's never good. And
When
it's just,
you're asking, "What do you wanna see me for?" and, "No, no, just come in." Oh my, oh, I'm
yeah, you know where this is going. But again, my heart is still like, I really wanted to connect back with my old tribe, you know? And so I went in there and then I walk in and, oh, there's some very senior people and my pastor sitting in the room, and they were telling me things that apparently I had been saying about my experiences away and things that I'd said. And I asked them, can you tell me exactly what, trying to, like, I guess it's like, get as the defense as opposed to the prosecutor. I was trying to get the evidence. Can you tell me what I've said, or who can you tell me who said these things? Thinking this is a big sense of betrayal. Like I must have said something to a friend who's then had a discussion with someone else who's, Chinese whispers ended up sounding like I was, slagging off at the church and how Pentecostals don't have the answer. It's actually, there's much more to life. But they wouldn't give me the answers. They wouldn't tell me who said things. They couldn't tell me exactly what it was. But I'd just been spreading bad vibes. It was that kind of, you're just spreading bad vibes. And I remember sobbing through the meeting because I felt like I was the tribe that I'd been my family for so long, who got me, and I felt got earlier. They didn't get me anymore. And
now you're on trial.
And now I was on trial, and my pastor didn't say a word in the whole meeting. And I think the trigger for me to go, you know what, it's one way or the other here, was when towards the end of the meeting, after I'd said, no, that's it, I really will commit. No, I'll absolutely keep my mouth shut. And, I said, I've just got questions. They said, that's great to have questions, but if you've got questions, come to us. And
report up, don't report across, don't report down, report up. Yeah. That's what Fiona said in our earlier interview. She was talking about that she was told you report up. And it's hard because sometimes they're the people that you have the problem with.
Yeah, it's tricky. And they said, and we hear that you're about to move house in with, some other people in the church. And this one person started to say, and we don't think that's a good idea. And like, then I just sort of like stopped. I was like, are you telling me who I can and can't live with? And one of the other seniors went, oh, no, no. And kind of actually put that aside. It was like, no, that's no, you live with whoever you want, blah, blah, blah. And that was kind of like a moment to me. I went, is that really the types of control and power and sway that a church or people in leadership should have?
So without naming names, thinking about roles, who were the people in that room? What were their roles? Were they middle leaders? Were they upper leaders? Who were they?
Yeah, I'd prefer not to say. But it doesn't get much higher. But having said that, again, I touch back on what I said earlier, like intention and heart was absolutely, I believe, in the right place, wanting to do the right thing, but had set this organization that really was passionate. They really, and they do a lot of great stuff. Was not malicious, was never intentionally trying to be negative or bad.
So, out of this incredibly painful, incredibly hurtful, and confronting situation, what came out of it? Was there an aha moment? Was there something that, I guess, shifted gears for you?
Or did you just walk away broken?
It was actually a bit of both. I left the meeting giving them an assurance that I was absolutely committed more than ever, and I'll be at every service, and I'll turn up on a Sunday, and I'll go to, small group and all that stuff. And because I did want to check into myself and actually test myself, well, maybe I have stepped out of line, well, have I done something wrong? And I want to be able to self-analyze and check in, well, maybe I have stuffed up. You know what? I'll give this a red hot go. I'll suck it up. I'll keep my mouth shut. I'll just make it I'll go back to that mental space I was when I was traveling, which was, it's just me and God, nothing else around me, the building, the structure, the the programs, the endless programs and activities. It's not about that. I would go into church, but I would sit up the back. And I've never been a really big hands in the air, exuberant, physical, traditional Pentecostal in terms of praise and worship. As I found when I was traveling, much more into that sort of early Christian mystic kind of the mysticism about spirituality. Like I just want to sit up the back and shut my eyes and light a candle, you know? So I'd let worship and praise just wash over me and I would feel transported and I would feel as though I was having these connections with God, but I wasn't physically demonstrating that. But I guess that's the thing, and the cliche was because I know all the, as we all do, oh, they're sitting up the back, that's so close to the back door. Oh, when you start sitting up the back and, looking a bit contemplative, oh, that's,
Yeah, you're on the way out.
And so that was the departure lounge. But the departure lounge for me was a place that it wasn't a definitive shut the door. I was, as you say, it was an incredibly hurtful experience to feel betrayed and rejected and misunderstood, and also feeling accused of something that you didn't do, and that you were given no evidence to support their argument. I just, I went in there going, I'm going to keep my heart right, my spirit sweet. It's just me and God. And actually, you know what? But before long, I just didn't, it was much better sleeping in on a Sunday morning. More and more, the change in me was when I did go, there would be things that I'd hear and experiences around me that would just jar, that they never jarred with me in the past, in terms of, just things that were taught that would, now I'm like, oh, do I really think that? Actually, no, that doesn't sit right with me.
See, now you're starting to resonate really strongly with the episode that we had with Josie McSkimming, who talked about these sites of injury, right? And what you're talking about there was basically, I mean, I'm sure there were a number, but there was one in particular that was just crushing. And, as we say at work, I wanted to give you an HR appropriate hug when you were telling that story because, and I seriously could relate to so much of that because I've had very similar experiences myself. So really, I just want to say to you, I get it. And I know B gets it too. And a lot of people listening get it. And so I really appreciate your honesty and telling us that story. But the other thing that resonated with me back to Josie's episode was then you started to have this pastoral revolt or this protest within yourself that when they would say these things, you would say, nah, I don't believe that anymore. And then came this strength, and then came this person that you always were that's starting to go, no, I'm not going to excuse the fact that I don't raise my hands, that I don't sit at the front. This is actually an expression of who I am and even my religion, my spirituality. So kudos to you.
Thanks, man. The departure lounge, I think, and I feel in many ways like I've been sitting in the departure lounge for a good 10 years after that. And the best description I came up for the journey was, I felt like a spiritual asylum seeking refugee, feeling like you've left the country that doesn't accept you anymore, or you feel unsafe in, and now you need to find a new country, you need to find a new home, a new tribe where you can feel safe. There was several churches I went to after that trying to find this new safe place. And either I'd just sit there and sob for 6 months in the, people thinking there's this basket case who's come in, and and interestingly, you'd see a few familiar faces sometimes. You go, oh yeah, hang on, I remember you. Wait, didn't I know you 5 years ago?
So what sort of churches were they? Where were you going?
What the first one was a smaller independent Pentecostal church that was really and how most churches, all the particular pastors have a particular strength. They're really good teaching, or actually really good pastoral counselling, the HR appropriate hug, and this one was I was like, wow, this is awesome teaching. And it was teaching that I wasn't every 10 minutes going, oh, that's ouch, that doesn't sit right. Ouch, that's not right. Wasn't Jesus all about hanging out with the widows and orphans? Actually, I was getting what I believed to be my interpretation of Christ. But then I also, the thing that started awakening me was just understanding and recognizing things that I'd been blinded to in the past. Stuff about gender and the roles of women and feeling actually, having that part of me awakened to feel uneasy about being in a place that didn't seem to recognize and value the role and the voice of women. Or that they did, but it was within a women appropriate roles, like, you're doing the children's ministry or that kind of thing, which just, makes me cringe. Not that I don't like kids, but, I don't have any. So there was that, yeah, Pentecostal church. And then I went to another one, which was a little smaller, but a little more charismatic and less Pentecostal. The old let's meet in the primary school hall. And then the one that I actually felt the most connected into was actually quite an intellectual, heady one where the pastor was actually a former big CCC member himself, but was, university educated and really went into pulling apart scripture and getting into the whys and the hows rather than just the building theory around stuff.
So he was already in the departure lounge himself.
Yeah, a little bit after me. Yeah, yeah. But even after a while, it just started to feel like, can you get involved in church? And as churches start to grow, they need volunteers to run the different programs and the activities. And again, it just became easier to sleep in on a Sunday morning. And actually, I started spending more time, which is, I guess, brings me more to where I am today. I have a really deep connection now with nature and with the bush. And so on a weekend, I would much prefer to go into the Green Cathedral, stand under a big, towering, giant tree, listen to, the streams trickle past me and the wind and the casuarinas whistling, and stand on a hilltop at sunset and look for what felt like forever, than to stand inside an air-conditioned building and sing another song that was written by some, white man. No offense.
There's many, I'm sure if you said that within your old scene, would say, oh, she's become a new ager. She's a
Oh,
spiritualist.
she is such a spiritualist. She's such a fucking tree. Well, I wouldn't say that. I have developed a potty mouth, though, I have to say, and it's quite empowering.
It does that when Satan takes over your life.
Yeah, I know. I have to go. Can you lay hands
Fucking
on
seat buckler, that's what you should say.
Oh, that's right. Fucking bought a Honda and I should have bought a Yamaha. So, yeah, no. And so the bush and the outdoors, and in terms of finding that place to connect now with the divine, with God, with whatever, like I said, this is still work in progress, I will always be a work in progress, is through stepping into an environment that doesn't ask anything of me than just to come as I am with my brain, be smart, take what you need to go into the bush to be safe, but just sit and be. And it's about the being, not the doing. That's been a big sort of thread through most of my story in life. But it's also led to the ability to look for other places to find that connection and that tribe. So not only, and there's things like bushwalking clubs, or there's friends who go hiking with you or whatever, but getting involved in search and rescue, as a volunteer, suddenly that internal part of, me and a lot of people that wants to contribute. And yeah, we used to contribute so much in churches. We used to just give and give and give and turn up and be passionate and amazing. And there's places we can do that all over. The world is full of need. And if you've got the square plug for the square need hole, there's always somewhere where you can give in that way.
So, see, I'm going to ask you a question, and you can tell me to stick it up my ass because it may be coming from an old framework. But I'm going to ask you because I'm sure that people are wondering. So, where are you at now? And what labels do you wear, if any? And in terms of who you were, right? You were a Pentecostal Christian. That was a fully defined label. Where are you now with all that?
I feel like my eyes and my heart has been, sounds like a Christian cliche. I feel like my eyes and my heart have been opened. I feel like I'm seeing things a lot clearer. And I think I'm seeing how judgmental and what a small, narrow focus I had before, because I was on that roundabout and all I saw was that. But by stepping off and seeing the color and the life outside, I'm able to see so much more and ask myself, is that right for me? I think I'm a lot more of a person now who sees the value within many different faith groups, not just the Christian flavors of ice cream. For myself, the whole Christian mysticism stuff is still what resonates the most with me within a nature framework, looking to see the fingerprint of God in nature. But that being, or that sense of God, is so much bigger than I ever, and indescribable, unwordable, because I feel that churches try so hard because of to appeal to different cultures and personality types or whatever. They're putting God in a box, saying, look, here's God, there it is on a box, that's what we're worshipping, and this is how we do it. Whereas the very nature of this divine spiritual being, whatever, is that it's so big and so unwordable, you can't put it in a box and define and say that's it and that's how we're going to, you know, because we're only human, our brains are only so big. How can I conceive the universe and the planets and other the solar system and everything outside? It's too big. So I like having more questions and answers now. I like not putting God in a box and saying that's him and putting a label on it. I like being open to think that maybe I've been wrong in the past. Maybe the arrogance of defining God as being this one particular thing is the be all and end all. I like now go, you know what? I don't know. But hey, let me look at that and sit that in my hand and try and look at it from different angles. Let me try and do away with any form of bias I might have had to look for evidence that confirms my own suspicion. No, I want to actually throw that away and think bigger, try and think outside a definition. I will now go and put my hand on a trunk of a tree and, stick my feet in a stream and drink out of it and just feel as safe, and actually much safer in the middle of the wilderness, 50 k's from a concrete road, than I ever did inside a church. Off a track, I'll feel so much safer, and I feel surrounded by life and by nature and by other created beings, trees, animals, nature. Yeah, totally new age, hippie, trippy shit, But it doesn't judge me, It doesn't judge me. It doesn't tell me I have to be a certain way or wear a certain kind of makeup or even turn up in makeup or even have a shower, because, I won't have a shower up there.
I think the new age trippy hippie shit is definitely a label which is applied from a certain lens. So we don't apply that, but some people of your past may. Reflecting on all those things that are hard to leave behind, those things that you've talked about, do you feel like you've reconciled that now, or are you still on a journey of reconciliation?
I think there's a journey, and this is where I feel I'm at right now, is actually forgiving yourself. I have no regrets about having given so much of my life and for such a long period of time to within an organised, formed structure of a church or churches. So forgiving yourself for what might be seen as lost time, I wasted so much, and the world was so full of colour and brightness before, but now I've got to catch up. Right now, I'm loving. Not to blow it up your asses, guys, but I'm loving the tribe that you guys are making. That you've created this sense with the potty and with Facebook, and also connecting with other people from my past who I'm finding that tribe as well. If we want to find people like us who get us, we look for people who've gone through the same thing. Oh look, there's other people who just we nod and we go, oh yeah, you had that too. Yeah, I get that. And that's another form of connection, and we need connection. And so right now, I'm still work in progress, but oh God, I love that you were recommending therapy to people, because I can tell you that to work through some of this kind of stuff, to actually talk to someone, and particularly, a therapist who has experience in whether it be spiritual, church abuse, that kind of thing, trauma, is so invaluable. And just to give you perspective on stuff. So yeah, if anyone is feeling they can't shift out of the bitterness and the anger, because you don't want to keep going around in a loop. You've got to get yourself out of that, and because you're missing the color and the wonderful movement off the roundabout if you just keep looking at the roundabout with bitterness.
See, that was amazing. Genuinely, I know that there's going to be so many people that are going to resonate with what you've shared and where you're at. I know listening to those stories, especially the trial, that's what we're going to call it from now on, all right? The trial. I've been on trial a number of times in my experience, and what Josie McSkimming talks about, those sites of injury and also that pastoral revolt. I just want to celebrate that and say, well done, really, for not only standing up to it eventually, but also knowing who you were and becoming who you are. One of the things that we've tried really hard to do with this season is we want to have people that have ended up in different places. So we've all come from a similar starting point, but some people are over there as atheists, and some people are over there as, tree hugging mystics, and other people are over there as, liberal Christians and it's all okay.
Yeah.
When we've got our own places where we've arrived, we make fucking podcasts, right? And that's okay too. So we want to celebrate you, celebrate your vulnerability and your honesty, but also where you've landed, because for some people listening to this, that's going to be where they want to go. So thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it.
Thanks B&T. Thanks for offering the platform and actually just approaching what I like about the voice that you guys have is it is non-judgmental, which is refreshing, but it is about an arc, a journey, recognizing we're all still on a work in progress and a development, and we will, until the day we're horizontal permanently, and that's what I want. I want the colors I want to keep discovering colors and asking more questions, and being okay to ask those questions and not feeling that the only people with the answers are upwards, but around me, and having these kind of conversations is actually super healing. So thanks for an hour of therapy. That was great. Where do I send the check?
No, first one's free. But we do.
After that, you have to pay.
We prescribe that you need 35 more.
Okay.
The first taste is free, but after that, you pay.
Oh, and when do I get the merch?
Go on to Redbubble and you can get merch. Here we are. We're 4 weeks out from Christmas. I love this little segue because I am right now wearing my long sleeve. I was a Teenage Fundy top. I've wrestled it back from my partner who has been wearing it. So she'll get one for Christmas. But get on board and get some Redbubble stuff for Christmas. Get it for your kids. Get it for your grandma. Even if they weren't fundamentalists, I don't care. Get them some.
Get them one anyway, yeah. Well, this has been great, and I've really appreciated you coming along and being a part of this. Next week, B, we're going to tell a little bit more of our stories. It's going to be one of those episodes where we talk to each other and share our shit, and it's kind of therapy. Thanks again to everyone for being a part of this today and for listening in. We look forward to seeing you in Facebook, in our Facebook group, or whatever other platform that you want to engage us on. So we look forward to hearing from you and hearing your thoughts. And I think, C, you were saying that you might make yourself available in the Facebook group. People want to chat and talk with you, for sure. So that'll be really good. We look forward to seeing you in there.
Absolutely. Come hug a tree with me.
Sounds good.
Awesome. See you later, people.